One. Hey, we're live on the Hays County Tejano Democrats page. Welcome. Today, our guest is Lucy Johnson. Welcome, Lucy. How are you doing today?
Good, good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're very happy to have you here. Thank you for agreeing to come on and to talk about the Permian Highway Pipeline, aka the Kinder Morgan Pipeline. Lucy Johnson is a very important person in the Kyle area. There's a long list of accomplishments. One of the accomplishments is she was the Kyle mayor at one time and did a fabulous job there. And also, we she worked in the Obama administration in education, correct?
Yes.
There, and so she's also a member of the TREAD Coalition, which is an organization that is fighting the Permian Highway Pipeline, and we'll talk about that today. She's actually personally affected because the pipeline is actually going through property owned by her family. So I wanted to start off by asking you how your family is personally affected by the Permian Highway Pipeline. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Well, I think we're doing as best as we can. So to have a little perspective for folks, so we own property that's just to the west of Kyle. We have approximately 3,800 acres along 150. And the Permian Highway Pipeline cuts through over 3 miles of our property. Almost all of it along FM 150 on the 6F portion of our ranch, which we use for cattle, but also significant portion that goes through the Halifax portion of our ranch that cuts away from 150 and goes down through the heart of one of our pastures and cuts towards the Blanco River. Luckily, it doesn't cross the Blanco River at our property. And we heard good news a few weeks ago that it's no longer going to cross the Blanco River northwest of Wimberley any longer. But it is by far the most extreme thing to happen to our ranch since my grandfather purchased it in 1933. We have, for 3 generations now, been ranchers and conservationists, and the majority of our property is actually under a conservation easement, which we've done to try and preserve the natural landscape and protect local wildlife and plants from development in perpetuity. This pipeline does everything that we're opposed to. It has taken down 200-year-old heritage oaks. It has cut through golden cheek warbler habitat, which is an endangered species that we have tried to protect on our property. It has made the entrance on 150 completely unrecognizable. They have clear cut 125 feet wide swath of land at all of our entrances. That means that it's just decimated what our property looks like from the highway and cut down and destroyed just countless acres of wildlife habitat. And even in the just along the edge of the route, it's also touched numerous karst features. So on top of plants and animals, we're also very important here at our property because we're over the Edwards Aquifer recharge zone, which means that when it rains, water goes straight through these karst features, or basically holes in the ground, into the aquifer and refills the aquifer, which is the source, as you know, Willie, of the majority of our drinking water here in Kyle, but also from Austin to San Antonio. There's over 2 million people who rely on the aquifer for their drinking water. And it's only a small section or swath of land that includes the recharge zone. Kinder Morgan has hit multiple karst features and has attempted to cover them and protect them to limited success. And we know that they have already damaged drinking water in Blanco County when they hit a karst feature. And we are trying to do our best, but living in, constant state of fear as to when or if they're going to hit another karst feature, and how much more land they might need to take.
So the karst features on your property, if there was to be a leak there, I guess the proximity of the karst features would put the gases inside the karst feature, and it would seep into the water.
Yes, and it's important to know as well, Kinder Morgan says this is a natural gas pipeline, and that's true, but there's other materials that travel in that pipeline other than pressurized natural gas, which is harmful enough, obviously. But there are liquids and other solids and particulates that are in the pipeline at any given time and would definitely have the risk of seeping into our drinking water.
I hadn't been by your property in quite a while, and I drove out that way recently on my way to Wimberley, and I saw the look, had been basic the physical look of the property dramatically because of all the cutting. It's really, I hate to say the word, but it's really ugly the way they drill through there, and they the depth to the property. And it's one of the most, this area, it's one of the most scenic routes in the area. And the pipeline has damaged what has been some of the shining features of this area. And it's just so sad to see what has happened. Let me ask you, I know that there's some lawsuits that are going on regarding the pipeline still. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, absolutely. So the organization that I sit on the board of, the TREAD Coalition, it stands for Texas Real Estate Advocacy and Defense Coalition. So it's Texas wide, and it promotes the rights of landowners across the state. And among other things, they focus a lot on eminent domain, conservation, property taxes, but particularly since 2019, TREAD is focused on eminent domain in terms of pipeline companies. And one of the things that has been particularly egregious about Kinder Morgan's actions is that they have taken the right of eminent domain, which most people think of as a government right, as the people's right, and used it as a private company to take land at their own will, regardless of any type of public hearing or feedback or regulatory practice. So we found that this goes against the Texas Constitution, for one, in that the Railroad Commission is supposed to regulate pipelines in the state of Texas, and the Railroad Commission has done nothing to regulate the pipeline process, and has approved with a rubber stamp every pipeline that has ever come before their board without exception. So one of the lawsuits that was filed in, I guess it was 2019, was focused on the Texas Constitution. That initial ruling went in Kinder Morgan's favor, but there was an appeal, and that appeal is still pending. Another lawsuit that's going on simultaneously is regarding FERC, or the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. This lawsuit was filed in 2020 by landowners against Kinder Morgan. That they felt that Kinder Morgan lacked the legal authority to take easements because the Permian Highway Pipeline, even though the pipeline itself is intrastate or within the entire state of Texas, the natural gas that they're carrying within this pipeline is interstate. It comes from Texas and it comes from New Mexico. And furthermore, the oil or the natural gas that's being carried is going towards the coast for export. So you're talking about a pipeline that has not just interstate implications, but international implications. And these interstate pipelines are supposed to be regulated under the Natural Gas Act and regulated by FERC. And so far, Kinder Morgan has filed a motion to dismiss this complaint. The Judge Pittman, who resides over the 5th District Court, is considering both sides. And this is one of these situations where, because it's 2020 and everything that could go wrong has gone wrong, we are still waiting. We're still pending any initial assessments from the judge, simply because COVID has pushed everything back in the courts. So it could be several months, if not years, but before this FERC lawsuit moves forward. One of the biggest lawsuits that TRED has been involved in is the one regarding the golden cheek warbler habitat and the Endangered Species Act. And I am not a lawyer, so I will try not to, I can't speak to the specifics, but basically, landowners and environmental specialists on the ground have been able to document Kinder Morgan's effects on and destruction of golden cheek warbler habitat, and also other dangerous practices like hitting those karst features, cutting trees without doing the proper oak wilt abatement, and doing things that could have really harmful effects on the environment and the endangered species, the golden cheek warbler. That lawsuit was filed in February of this year, and we originally sought an emergency injunction. That order was denied by the judge. However, the lawsuit moved forward. In July, we filed a motion for summary judgment. Number one, because we found that Kinder Morgan was violating the Endangered Species Act. There was concerns regarding NEPA as well, that the wrong permit was filed, and lots of other issues that go into the weeds. And then lastly, there's also been other court cases across the United States regarding oil and natural gas pipelines that have shown that the excuses that Kinder Morgan have been using are no longer valid. So that motion for summary judgment against Kinder Morgan was filed last month, and we are awaiting the judge's decision. Kinder Morgan, on their part, has also filed summary motions to dismiss, and we'll be waiting on Judge Pittman to make his decision. That could mean that he makes a decision tomorrow. That could mean that he makes a decision in September or October. We don't know. But I think there is a feeling or a concern amongst people in the community that the pipeline is already in the ground in most places. The destruction has already been done. And at this point, there's nothing that can be or will be done to stop the pipeline. And with that being said, I can understand that, but it's not true. We've got several lawsuits that are in the pipeline that are awaiting judgment. And at any point in time, we could still come out on top of this.
It seems to me like if you know, if I own property in the wake of the Kinder Morgan pipeline, and I wanted to develop it, and I was violating some of these same laws like golden cheek warbler habitat and other laws, you know, I would be cited and I would be stopped. But it seems like Kinder Morgan has carte blanche to keep doing things that a private landowner couldn't do with their own land. I don't know if that's
Yeah, that's absolutely
accurate or
right.
not, but it seems like that's,
You know, one of the most
and
egregious
so
things that I've learned is that oil and gas pipelines are exempt from TCQ regulation and permitting. And I know you're familiar with TCQ, but if a city or a landowner wants to build a wastewater pipeline, they have to go through TCQ to get any type of pipe approved. But Kinder Morgan can put a 42-inch natural gas pipeline across rivers and streams and wetlands and be completely exempt from TCQ.
it's like a get out of jail free card they
It is.
basically have,
It is.
you know. What can just a regular person do out there? Like if somebody's watching this and they want to join and do something uh, to either ameliorate what's happening or to stop the pipeline from going further, what would you encourage somebody who is to do?
There's several things you can do, and thanks for bringing that subject up. You can see scrolling on the bottom of this page is a link to the TREAD Coalition website, treadcoalition.org. There you can find more information about the ongoing activities against the Permian Basin pipeline. You can find out more about what TREAD is doing, not just on this pipeline, but to protect landowners' rights across the state on several issues. And if you have the ability right now, certainly we would welcome any and all donations. Fighting these lawsuits is not cheap, but it's something that I know TREAD is committed to because I think we can't leave things the way they are now. Another way that TREAD has been really active and that other folks can be active as well is lobbying the state legislature. Right now, state oil and gas companies really can run amok and really have no state regulations regarding how they can use the power of eminent domain. No limitations on that. And we have been working with several people in the legislature, including our own state rep, Aaron Zwiener, to change that. We made some progress in the last session, and there were bills that had public hearings, which was, we found out, much further than anyone had gotten before the last legislature, which was good to know. But this next session, we really want to go beyond that and create state laws that really do regulate and give the public a say in the use of eminent domain by private companies, whether they're pipeline companies or not. And reaching out to your state legislatures, whether it's our state rep or state senators, or some of our statewide office holders like the lieutenant governor or the governor's office, to let them know how upsetting this has been. I can speak as a landowner, but just because you're not a landowner yourself, Kyle has been severely affected by this pipeline. Not only is it dangerous for the residents around it, but I know the city of Kyle had several noise complaints as they were testing the pipeline on the east side of Kyle, where you had noise over 105 decibels just from testing the pipeline with no regard to residents. And that's the least of our worries, right? Is the noise. But let your local officials, whether it be city council, state rep, Senator, know how you feel about this and how you've been affected, not necessarily as a landowner, but just as a community stakeholder.
I think that what's dismaying to me is the fact that these laws don't exist. And I'm guessing some of that might have to do with the fact that there's a lot of money that's being donated to perhaps some political candidates or office holders that maybe have influenced that. I don't know, but it seems like these would just be common sense laws that should exist, but for whatever reason they don't exist. Maybe because of the power of some of the lobbies in the oil and gas industry, perhaps. I don't know, but it just seems like some of this would be common sense legislation that should exist but doesn't.
You know, the thing about money in politics is no matter what ethics reform you try to do, someone will find a way to give money to politicians. The problem is campaign donations are not votes. And at the end of the day, as an elected official, your constituency is your residents, not your donors. And what has been interesting about this is that it's been such a bipartisan issue because there are Republicans out there that do care about private property rights, like they say they all do. And we've been able to get elected officials from both sides of the aisle to care about this. It is interesting to see just how much money oil and gas sends to elected officials statewide. And it's not just to Republicans. But the best thing to counteract that money is to vote and to tell your friends to vote. Because as we've seen in several elections, just because you raise more funds does not guarantee that you'll win an election. And I think folks need to know who is out there voting against private property rights. And that's what TRED intends to do in our advocacy and in talking with and educating the state legislature.
That's great. I really appreciate all that you're doing to educate the public on this program and with TRED. I wanted to thank you, Lucy, for being a guest on the show. You've dropped a lot of knowledge here that I think that we really needed to hear. And, the fight is ongoing.
It is.
So I appreciate that. Is there anything that maybe I left out that might be important to bring?
You know, another thing that folks can do, especially if you live in Kyle or San Marcos, and you happen to drive by where the pipeline is being constructed, is if you see anything that doesn't look right, give your city council a call, give your state rep a call. We have seen over and over that Kinder Morgan will cut corners when no one's watching. And a lot of the things that we have gotten changed on the routing of the pipeline, even though it's micro adjustments, are because people have been watching. And so don't think that if you're not a landowner, you're not a part of this and you're helpless. If you drive any of those routes on a daily or weekly basis, keep your eyes open and feel free to call people and let them know what's going on.
That's good advice. That's great advice. Thank you. Thank you. Again, we have Lucy Johnson here with us as our guest on the Tejano Democrats Facebook Live show. We're going to have to come up with a name for this show. Maybe y'all can put something in the comments if you have a name for this show so we can name it. But we're really happy to have you on the show. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here. We appreciate you very much, Lucy. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm happy to be able to speak about this.
It's good to have you here. And everybody, if you would kindly, if something is with you, think about joining the Tejano Democrats. We could use more members for sure. Please consider registering to vote if you are not registered to vote. And stay tuned. Like this page, follow this page, because we're going to have a lot of other guests coming up in the next few months that I think you'll really be interested in. So again, from the Hayes County Tejano Democrats, this is Willie Tenorio Jr. signing off. Talk to y'all soon. And we are so glad that you joined us today.
Thanks.